It's a bright and sunny day in St. Mary's, Georgia. I pull my grandmother's hand-me-down Toyota Camry into a sandy parking lot, and it's immediately clear that the sand was once in the ocean. It's full of small shells, pieces of coral, and other marine artifacts. My eye has a habit of always scanning the ground in search of anything interesting, a cool shell, bones, bugs, feathers, you name it. This is such a core personality trait of mine that for a period of time, my parents just assumed that I would grow up to be an archaeologist someday. But on this particular day, I was a college student just a year away from graduating with a degree in printmaking from Savannah College of Art and Design. With the car shut off, Owen, my boyfriend of 2 years, and I make our way to the back of the car. A humid breeze sends waves through the Spanish moss that are hanging delicately from the live oaks above us. We hoist 2 very heavy backpacking packs onto our back and make our way across the street to the ticket window of the Cumberland Queen. We purchase 2 tickets for the next ferry that is scheduled to depart within the hour. The ferry terminal is a hubbub of activity. People have come prepared with gear for every imaginable type of beach activity. They have kayaks, fishing gear, buckets and shovels for building sandcastles, metal detectors, bikes, beach chairs, and heaps of camping gear. And then there's us. We sit there nervously with just 2 backpacks and a map of Cumberland Island National Seashore. Cumberland Island National Seashore protects Georgia's largest and southernmost barrier island on the beautiful Atlantic coast. In addition to its fantastic beaches, Cumberland Island is also home to sand dunes, marshes, freshwater lakes, wild horses, a maritime forest that is built of the most insane tangle of live oak trees you have ever seen, and a very rich and long human history. It's 2011, it's June, and we've arrived for a long weekend with the plans to backpack the length of the island so we can experience all that Cumberland Island has to offer. We felt we had picked an approachable hike for one of our first backpacking trips because the island is long and narrow and seemingly very straightforward to navigate. As we load onto the ferry, we have a mix of excitement and nervousness to try something new. Welcome to Camp Nowhere. Let's get on trail. The ferry landed at Sea Camp. Everyone loaded their beach toys into carts to find their way to their campsite in the grove of live oak trees. This is where most people on the ferry plan to spend their long weekend. Owen and I, however, had our sights set on the north end of the island. Our goal for the day was to make it just over 10 miles north to explore the marshland and the historic First Black Baptist Church on the island. From there, we would return south to Sea Camp, where we'd spend 2 days exploring the southern end of the island, which is known to be a great place to look for shark's teeth. With our national park map in hand, we started down a very sandy road, trudging towards the north end of the island in search of our trail. It's June in Georgia, near the ocean, which means it's hot, it's humid, and if you sit still for too long, the mosquitoes threaten to pick you up and take you away. As we got into hiking, the miles seemed to tick by easily. We enjoyed the inland ponds. We stopped to take a look at the majestic wild horses that were grazing in the open fields. We marveled over the fact that the trail was lined by prickly pears, which seems surprising for the Georgia coast. We took a trail out to the beach for lunch, where we enjoyed our sandwiches and sweeping views of the Atlantic Ocean with not a single soul in sight in any direction. But before doing our last push of walking for the day, we decided to consult the map. Owen pulled out our already tattered map, limp from the humidity. He looked over the map, and his eyes almost immediately narrowed. Even though we hadn't been together all that long, I already knew this face to mean that something was amiss. Owen kept scanning and said nothing. Starting to be a little concerned, I said, "So, how's our progress looking?" Owen was slow to respond, and then eventually said, I'm not exactly sure where we are. He slipped the map over to me and showed me what he was seeing to get a second opinion. After scanning the map myself, he was right. It was not clear where we were. However, it seemed that we could be in one of two places. If it was the first place, it meant that we had covered a very small fraction of the distance that we had planned to cover that day. If we were in the second possible place, it put us in a slightly better position, but we still had to hustle to make it to our intended camp spot for the night. We both decided that the best way to sort out where we were was just to keep walking north on the beach and look for some sort of landmark that could help us confirm our location. So the two of us set off north on the beach, sinking into the soft sand and bracing against the wind that seemed to be picking up with every passing minute. When walking in the sand, it feels like time slips by very slowly. So after what felt like an eternity, we stopped to check our map one more time, having still not seen any landmarks of note. Owen turned around so I could snag the map out of the back of his pack. The map was nowhere to be found. Owen, are you sure you put the map back here? Owen patted down his pockets and then said, the only other place it could be is in my pockets, and I definitely don't have it. I searched his back again, and sure enough, the map was gone. Owen, I think the map is blown away. The two of us stood there for a second, dumbstruck, staring at each other in silence. Neither one of us was entirely sure what to do about this new development. Before panicking, we decided to take stock of the situation. Here's what we had. We suspected that when we stopped for lunch, we were in the first place we assumed we'd be. If we were further north, there likely would have been some form of landmark to let us know that we were further north. With that knowledge, there was no way that we were going to make it to the north end of the island because we were so much farther from our end destination, and now we had no map. We had no way to navigate back to the trail. We didn't know where camp spots were. We didn't know where we could fill our water or how we would navigate ourselves back south, other than by just turning around and retracing our steps. After taking the entire situation into consideration, we decided it was a terrible idea to hike any further for the sake of saving our water, but also not making it any harder on ourselves so we could navigate ourselves back to sea camp the next day. Feeling very defeated for falling so short of our own expectations for the day, we decided to turn towards the tree line and try to find a flat place to set up our camp for the night. As Owen and I set up our tent, we kind of started to rehash the details of the day to better understand how it took us so long to really not go that far. In the end, we chalked it up to the heat, the distractions of all the animals along the way, and getting a late start after arriving on the mid-morning ferry. But there's absolutely nothing that we could do about it in that moment, so we decided to turn in for the night. That night, the wind continued to howl. Between the heat, the loud wind, and tree noises, the both of us laid awake for the vast majority of the night. But at some point, in the small hours of the morning, when the woods were still pitch black dark, a new sound erupted from the darkness. It's the type of sound that you've never needed to hear before to know exactly what it was. One of the towering trees near our camp had snapped in the wind. And in the dark, we had no way of knowing where it was or if we were going to be in the path of the falling tree. I think that with hindsight, we always have, a lot more idea of what we would do in that moment. But I think the two of us just laid there and held our breath waiting for the tree to make contact with the ground. And when it did, that loud sound and impact reverberated through us and the tent. Damn, that was really close, Owen whispered at me in the dark. Yeah, that was too close. Do you think that we need to move? I asked, even knowing there was no real answer to that question. Where would we go? For the rest of the night, we laid there with our eyes open, searching the night for any signs of any more falling trees. The morning was bright and heavy with humidity. The two of us crawled out of our tent into the grove of stick-straight pines and tentatively were searching for the fallen tree. We didn't have to look far. Mere feet from our tent laid the massive tree that had snapped in the wind. With eyes wide at the realization of just how narrowly we had escaped being absolutely smushed by a tree, Owen and I shot glances at each other and let out a nervous laugh that I think that we had been holding on to since the tree came down. Ironically, that morning, as we were breaking down camp and making breakfast, we used that tree as our bench. We set out that day, headed back south to retrace our steps and hopefully make it back to sea camp. But why is it that the return journey always seems so much faster and so much easier? It felt like we arrived back at sea camp in a very small fraction of the time it took us to hike the exact same distance north the previous day. I guess that's just what happens when you aren't blindly wandering through the woods. Back at sea camp, we picked our way through the tangled live oak trees to our campsite, where we had a picnic table and something that resembled a bird cage in the middle of a clearing. We had been warned that the raccoons in the area have a bit of a habit of stealing food from people's campsites. The bird cage was there so you could store all of your food inside of it to keep it safe from being stolen from the little characters. Hungry from the day of hiking, we sat out all of our lunch on the picnic table and then decided to quickly pop over to the bathroom that was just feet from our camp spot. Having only been gone for moments, we come around the corner to the clearing, which is our camp spot, and see a raccoon running towards the undergrowth on its hind legs, mind you, holding one of our chocolate milks with both of its people hands. We yelled, we chased after it, but as soon as it got to the edge of our camp spot, it disappeared without a trace. Owen and I looked at each other and agreed that they were not kidding about the raccoons and that we definitely needed to be more careful and not leave any more food unattended. With that, we sat down to eat the remainder of our lunch. After eating, we went out to the beach to swim in the ocean, which was surprisingly our first time in the water since arriving on the island. And that's just because the previous day we thought we would have all this time to be able to hike and swim. But turns out our slow progress and getting lost took up most of the day. The water was refreshing, and after spending the last 24 hours sweating profusely, it was a really nice way to cool off. After some time on the beach leisuring, we stopped by the bathroom on our way back to camp to rinse off and change into some clean clothes. Later that evening, as we came back to our camp spot after a brief walk, we come around the corner to see another raccoon, and this time it's running off, dragging Owen's bathing suit that he had worn to the beach that day. We left it just on the picnic table to dry out because we didn't think that we would have to worry about the raccoons stealing a bathing suit. Owen yelled, "Oh, hell no," and chased after the raccoon who was dragging the suit by the drawstrings. Just like the first time, it disappeared into the undergrowth with his brand new bathing suit. Because it was new, Owen and I decided to check the surrounding area of our camp spot. We decided to climb up into the live oak trees to see if we could get a higher vantage point to find the suit abandoned in the woods around our camp spot. Because, theoretically speaking, what does a raccoon need with a bathing suit? We figured as soon as it realized that they couldn't eat it, then maybe they would just ditch it and we could retrieve his suit. We spent longer than I'm proud to say searching in the trees and the undergrowth around our spot, asked other campers, and sadly the suit was never found. To this day, Owen and I will occasionally wonder, what did those raccoons do with that bathing suit? Let's take a quick second to get on the same page. I think that we can all agree that coolers weren't working. They're too bulky, too heavy, tons of wasted space. But Dometic has rebuilt them from the outside in. Recon is a cooler system that is 30% lighter than roto-molded coolers, making them lightweight and durable. Recon also features a vehicle-optimized system, so they're stackable, packable, and can be strapped down. My personal favorite is the dual-opening, removable lid, which allows you to access the contents no matter where you have it stashed. When you venture out for a trip into the unknown, no two trips look the same, right? So why pack like they do? Recon is a cooler system designed and built to flex with you. Pack more in, chill smarter, keep moving with Recon by Dometic. If you enjoy traveling and storytelling about traveling, maybe you'll be interested in our latest travel series, Meant to Be. The 6-part series follows our journey through Western Canada and the Barrier Islands as we check off our final bucket list destinations in North America. I don't want to give away too much, but I can say if you're listening to this podcast and you find some of the themes that we explore interesting, something tells me that you'll enjoy the series. You can watch Meant to Be over on our YouTube channel or on Patreon. Our Patreon community gets to watch episodes 1 week early and has access to a prologue episode for the series, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff too. You can find all the details for both of those shows in the show notes of this episode, and I hope you enjoy. After a very eventful day, Owen and I decided to hit the hay. But late that night, Owen and I woke up again to yet another unfamiliar sound. This one was more like thump, 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 rhythmic, but continuous. Whispering into the darkness in my general direction, Owen asked, "What in the world do you think that is? It sounds so close." I said, "I don't really know. I think I'm going to try to find my headlamp to see if maybe we can see anything." I fumbled through the darkness and finally found it, and I quickly flashed my light in the direction that the sound is coming from, and immediately we find the culprit. You have got to be kidding me. It was... Are you ready for this? The light settled on the birdcage in the middle of camp, and dangling from the bread bag is a raccoon. So let me paint a little picture here. This raccoon managed to grab a loaf of bread that we had placed perfectly centered inside the birdcage and away from the walls, so they could not reach it, but dangling in midair from the loose end of the bread bag by its people hands is this raccoon doing a whole body wave jerk thing, trying to pull the bag of bread through the walls of the cage. Obviously, it's never going to be able to get it out, but the sound that we were hearing was the bag of bread slamming up against the wall of the cage. These raccoons were relentless. We ended up shooing the raccoon away, but needless to say, neither one of us slept for a second night in a row because all you could hear was the raccoons scurrying around our camp spot trying to get at our loaf of bread. Unsurprisingly, on the third day, we woke up utterly exhausted from 2 terrible nights of no sleep in a row, but we decided that we wanted to do our best to make the most of our last day on the island. To do this, we decided to make a second attempt at making it to the north end of the island, but this time we were going to try rental bikes that were available where the ferry dropped us off. We picked 2 of the most able-looking bikes and picked up a fresh park map and set off down the same road that we did when we landed on the island a few days before. It didn't take but a few moments to realize that our rental bikes were not exactly in the best shape. They live a hard life on Cumberland Island. They're constantly exposed to the salty air and humidity, 2 things that are pretty much metal's worst enemy. But with these bikes, we weren't sneaking up on anybody because they were stuck in some random gear and the rusty chains whined in protest with every single pedal stroke. Owen and I laughed, realizing that it was going to be an absolute miracle if we made it the 10 miles that we needed to cover to the north end of the island. A few miles down the road, sweaty, tired of hearing our bikes complain, we decided to stop at Plum Orchard for a little bit of a break and a tour of a 22,000 square foot Georgian revival mansion. Only in Georgia. Back in the 1880s, the Pittsburgh steel mogul Thomas Carnegie, you know the guy, and his wife bought the majority of Cumberland Island to be the site of their winter home. After building their own home on the southern end of the island, one of their children built what is now known as Plum Orchard as their own personal winter home in 1898. The home, which feels like a generous term for a building of that size, featured an indoor swimming pool, racquetball court, Carnegie family heirlooms, and as the name suggests, a plum orchard. After the tour was over, Owen and I decided it was time to hop back on our rusty bikes and continue our journey north. What felt like mere moments after being back on the bike, though, my chain developed this really annoying habit of falling off. I'd ride for about 5 minutes, the chain would pop off, I'd get off the bike, I'd put it back on, and we'd keep riding. It just felt like a sign, though, so after one of these chain derailments, I just decided it was time to turn around and head back down towards camp. The north end of the island just was not in the cards for us. But as I crouched down on the road to put my chain back on one last time, my ever-wandering eye spotted something in the sandy road. With my greasy hands, I wiped the sand away to reveal a megalodon tooth the size of my palm. I screamed of sheer joy at what I had found. My entire life, I have walked countless shorelines in search of shark's teeth, and don't get me wrong, I found plenty in my day. I found lots of shark's teeth, even on this trip alone. But any person who likes looking for shark's teeth has a megalodon tooth in mind as the ultimate thing they could ever hope to find. And here I was, sweaty, sandy, covered in bike grease, and standing in the middle of nowhere, on a road no less, holding something that was made millions of years ago. It felt like in that moment, I could see the string of time leading from my hand back 3.6 million years when these behemoths used to rule the ocean. I was over the moon. As I biked back, stopping every few minutes to put my chain back on my bike, the tooth weighed heavy in both my pocket and my mind. The thought that this tooth was once in the mouth of a shark that grew to be between 54 and 80 feet long fell to the ocean floor and over time fossilized. Then millions of years later, the Army Corps of Engineers dredged the tooth up with sand from a deep channel off the coast of Georgia to allow ship freighters to pass through these waters. And then that sand was used on this inland road so the Carnegie family could access their mansions, and then randomly, the chain on my bike happened to pop off right where it laid in the sand. That is utterly mind-blowing to me. This island and its dredge piles to the south are known to shark's teeth hunters all over for being a great place to hunt for shark's teeth. But here I was, on a road, after all this stuff happened, holding the ultimate prize. That was the first of many trips that Owen and I have actually taken to Cumberland Island over the years, and to this day, we have actually never made it to the north end of the island, despite the fact that we've tried many times. On our next attempt in 2018, we decided to bike once again to the north end of the island, and Owen's bike chain actually snapped halfway there. So he had no way of getting back down to the southern end of the island. And we ended up having to kind of jerry-rig this towing system. And it ended up being I tied this palm frond to my backpack, and then Owen held on to the stick end of the palm frond, and I literally just dragged him the 7+ miles back down to sea camp. After making it back down to the southern end of the island on that trip, we decided to go out and try to find these mythical dredge piles that are known for its shark's teeth. And still, to this day, I've never found those dredge piles. But while we were out there looking for the piles, a tornado touched down on the island, actually very close to where Owen's chain had broken earlier that day. And we ended up being taken back to the National Park office and had to shelter in place with most of the other people that were visiting the island that day. Truly, Cumberland Island has had a habit of chewing us up and spitting us back out at the end, but for some reason, I just can't get enough of that place. I think that there's something so special about venturing into the outdoors because you never know exactly what you're going to get. You just have to stay on your toes, make adjustments, and work with whatever does end up coming your way. And hey, if nothing else, you get a great story out of the deal.